got Mr. Marcos on the call. He's probably got the top ghostwriting agency on Twitter, making over like 110K a month, absolutely crushing it.
Ties into the next question of mine is like, how are you tying into the meta, like, and how are you translating that over to your writers? Yeah, and then maybe if you can tie this specifically to like LinkedIn.
So like how I translate the meta and like pass that off to my team.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's an interesting one. Like I'm not really like super informed on how people run their companies, but my company is very independent and our team is not really employees. It's more like entrepreneurs. They're essentially like entrepreneurial writers who didn't want to do all the bullshit CEO shit like SOPs and Airtables that Dakota spends $11,000 on, and like that shit sucks. Like I hate it, but I do it because I love my team, right? So my point is that they were pretty proactive in learning the meta themselves. But whenever I get nuggets, like for example, I just hung out with some big LinkedIn people recently. We have weekly meetings where we sit down and just kind of talk about the meta for all platforms every week for years. So that's kind of when I will translate it. And then on top of that, we always have like ongoing swipe files. So our ongoing swipe file is updating every day. So I'd say between the swipe file that daily updates and our weekly sync ups, plus my team is like proactive enough to just be on the platform. One of my big hiring mantras is I need to hire people that are already kind of native to the platforms. I would never hire someone for Twitter that's from like Instagram, never downloaded Twitter. They hate Elon Musk, right? That doesn't make any sense. So I'd say it's a mixture of those things.
And how do those meetings that you're having, how do they run, or how are you guys dialing into the meta from the group?
Yeah, so the cool thing too is like my team is like the culture. I've always prioritized culture over everything. And if you follow me, you know that like culture is my number one thing. So I've hired people that are really just like we treat each other like buddies. Like, yes, there is of course like a level of chain of command, but we kind of just show up to the call, talk shit, open up the apps. We will essentially like open up our swipe files, what's in the swipe file right now. We'll talk about our client performance. If there's any clients that are underperforming, we'll kind of just talk about that client to start. So that's like kind of like the overarching theme of it. But in general, it's kind of just like you're having coffee and you're talking about work, and like what else are you going to talk about? It's the whole business, right? So does that make sense? I'm not a traditional CEO of like agenda icebreaker, let's all jump up and down, right? No, I don't do that. So yeah, it's very sorry.
Now, I was saying you are at the top of the food chain, so I guess we all have something to learn.
I don't know. Dakota says that. I don't know. I haven't really been paying attention. I think Dakota's at the top of the food chain.
I'm just some guy with nice eyebrows
in a collared shirt.
Yeah, I gotta flick them up.
And Marcus, how does AI inform your process or your writer's processes?
I wouldn't say AI informs the process, but it's like if you're not using AI, you're really stupid. Like AI is so powerful. I'd say the thing about AI that I learned, and I just made a video about this like 2 days ago. The thing that AI I learned is it's really bad when it's naked, but it's really good when you dress it up with all of your IP. So like it's only going to be as good as you train it to be, and it can only be trained on what you know. So if you don't know anything, it's useless. So I think what I've learned the most is that anytime I have a repeatable task, I can use AI, but anytime I have a creative task, I kind of can use it if I have like writer's block, or I can train it on frameworks, but I can't really, it has never really put out the absolute 100% final product. At the very most I've ever seen is like 95%. But there's always something that's off. And I was just making fun of DeepSeek because this whole DeepSeek came out, and I just like jokingly typed like write me a viral tweet, and it was the worst thing that I've ever seen. I'm like, nope, still bad. But yeah, AI, there's so many ways you can use it. We use it for a ton of stuff, you know, like SOP creation lately has been like a huge one for me, because you could just feed it like your SOP template and it'll just spit it back to you for anything you need. So that's been really helpful. I use it as a fractional CFO. That's been really helpful as well. Feed it all my P&Ls, like where can I optimize? So yeah, super helpful if you know how to use it, but I'm admittedly still learning how to get like the absolute most out of it.
So you don't really use it for content, it's more ideation, that type of thing?
Yeah, but you still can use it for content. You can use it for content. It's just you can't use it naked. Like you can't just say, write me a LinkedIn post. It's going to be the worst thing you've ever seen. But if you've already written good content and you can feed it that and train it on your old content, then it can be good. I'd say the caveat here is that something that worked 2 years ago and then you feed it to Claude is not going to work. So if, for example, tomorrow the framework that you fed it in is not going to be working on the algorithm, it's not going to work. It's not going to work the next day or next week. So you kind of have to keep it super fresh, which still requires the human intervention. I think where it gets really interesting is when they're trained on their own, like when you can train it on the algorithm itself. Like for example, X being open source, feeding it that algorithm. But right now the problem with the X algorithm is that this whole open source thing, they give you like the code is from like 2022 and it was like likes or 10x reach. None of it made any sense and it's all bullshit. But when and if and when the open source algorithms are like the meta and they actually can be really helpful, I think that's really interesting too.
Cool. Thanks. Appreciate it.